Somewhere in the middle of the world's second longest underwater cave, Kent Hirsch's safety line came to an end, but all he could see was endless darkness. No sign of an exit. Deathly uncertainty awaited, while behind lay a long journey with dwindling air supplies. So the divers made the fateful decision to turn back, unaware that the exit was just a few dozen meters away. Viewer discretion is advised because I'm about to tell you what these divers went through in the Columbus cenote. The town of Tulum lies in the Yucatan Peninsula, along the Caribbean coast of Mexico. Over the past 3 decades, it's transformed from a small village into a popular tourist spot. One of the reasons is the ruins of the ancient Mayan city, and the other is Sac Actun. This massive underwater cave system stretches for hundreds of kilometers. In 2018, it snagged the title of the world's longest, as it was revealed that neighboring tunnels, Dos Ojos, were part of Sac Actun. But in the following years, with explorers actively researching the Ox-Bell-Ha system from another side of Tulum, and it snagged the title back in 2023. If Sac Actun has managed to reclaim the crown at the time you're watching this video, drop me a comment. It winds beneath the Mexican jungle for 379 kilometers, even longer than the width of the Yucatan Peninsula itself. And 228 cenotes lead the way to this colossal underground structure. Natural lakes or wells serving as entrances and exits to the caves. Almost every cave diver in the world dreams of descending there. Only the best can do it, because Sac Actun is incredibly complex and dangerous. Yet 2 experienced teams arriving to dive in Tulum in December 2004 were ready to take on the challenge. This story focuses on one of them. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any photos of the divers online. So, meet Kent Hirsch, a dentist, cyclist, skier, and skydiver, known as Dr. Deco, short for decompression. Plus, Hirsch is a certified cave diver with 20 years of experience and 125 dives into underwater tunnels. His constant partner and buddy, Michael Nast, nicknamed Caveman, is a lawyer, cyclist, marathon runner, and cave diver with 75 dives under his belt. And the most experienced members of the team were Gene and William Downey, a couple who, over 30 years together, completed over 300 dives into underwater caves. This foursome planned to dive into the caves with another team through the cenote Kalimba. Above ground, it looks like a small hidden water hole nestled among rocks, with an entrance no deeper than 10 meters and a gentle current. However, there's a long underwater tunnel that connects with another one and ends at the Box Chen cenote. This was the route planned by the 2 mentioned teams. Still, navigating in such a complex cave system comes with a bunch of rules, most of which revolve around navigation. They're like road rules, and we're about to take a micro course in cave diving theory to understand what happened in the Columbus cenote in 2004. First off, apologies to the pro divers for any oversimplifications or inaccuracies. Drop a comment if I made any critical errors, and share your diving experience. So, to survive underwater caves, you gotta breathe, see, and understand where you're going. Depending on the depth, time, and other dive specifics, divers use different breathing tanks filled with appropriate gas mixes. But for this story's sake, let's just say they were breathing air, using double tanks. Divers always divide their gas mix like this: 1/3 for moving forward, another third for the return trip, and the last third for emergencies. And to see where they're going, divers bring powerful lights. Now, what if they get lost or their lights fail? That's where special lines come in. The main permanent lines, like highways in the cave system. In the Sac Actun cave complex stretch we're talking about, there are 3 of them: Kalimba, Box Chen, and another unknown one to you, Paso de Lagarto. Even with 0 visibility, divers can navigate the cave by holding on to these lines. Nevertheless, there are turns, side tunnels, and places where one line ends and another begins a few meters or tens of meters away. These are called gaps. Crossing them is called a jump. In reality though, divers bring a jump spool with a line and stretch it between 2 permanent lines. To not just move forward but also know how to get back, they use markers that are kind of analogous to road signs. Triangular arrows point everyone to the nearest exit. Round cookies are left for their team or other divers to mark necessary turns or indicate someone's presence in the cave. And rems are individual markers. So, the route for the 2 teams that arrived to dive in Tulum involved moving from the Columbus cenote to the end of the main line. jumping to Paso de Lagarto, a 3-minute ride along this line, and then another jump at a sharp turn to Box Chen, and then back the same way. The more experienced 5-member team, led by a professional guide, was supposed to go first. Besides planning to reach the Box Chen cenote, they were also tasked with laying lines for jumps at gap locations. At the end of the Kalimba path, a line with a carabiner was smartly secured so that anyone could easily connect to Paso de Lagarto. For the jump to Box Chen, the dive team planned to deploy their own neon pink jump line, following them on the same route but not going all the way to the cenote. There was the previously mentioned 4-member team. Before diving, they discussed all the details and agreed that they would attack cookies on both jump lines. The first one was to let other divers know that someone had already used the line and to mark the exit to the Kalimba cenote. The team that emerged first from the cave, namely the 4 divers, was to remove the marker from the second neon pink line. This way, the 5-member team would know that no one was left in the tunnel and they could remove the jump line, sort of cleaning up after themselves. So, on December 9th, the 2 teams started their dive right on schedule. The 5-member team went first, nailed the route, and surfaced at Box Chen. They had a quick chat and then went back in for the return trip. But on the jump line from Box Chen to Paso de Lagarto, they couldn't find the cookies, which meant the 4 divers had already gone into the cave and out, just as agreed, taking the cookies with them. So, as planned, the team removed the neon pink line and finally emerged at the Kalimba cenote. Everything seemed perfect for the 5, except the 4 divers were still missing on the surface. The guide diving with the 5 thought they changed plans at the last minute to head to the nearby cenote, yet when he got there was no sign of them. Half an hour after the 5 returned from the cave, 2 divers emerged in Kalimba, gasping for air. After catching their breath, they nervously recounted what had just happened to them in the caves. Hirsch, Nast, and the Downey couple dived into the Kalimba cenote after the 5. They covered about 500 meters in 32 minutes, reaching the first 2-meter jump spot. They successfully made the jump, swam 20 meters along the Paso de Lagarto line, and jumped to Box Chen. But the 4 didn't venture deep into the cave because Michael Nast checked the air supply and realized they had already used up a third. It was time to turn back. So the 4 turned around, and when they reached the neon pink jump line, Gene removed the cookie as they agreed with the other team. The marker indicating the direction to the Kalimba cenote was still there. They were supposed to cover the same 20 meters back to the second jump, just in the opposite direction, and then turn right. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. Instead, all 4 team members, for some unknown reason, continued along the Paso de Lagarto line and turned left. They all knew they only had 3 minutes to reach the second jump on the way to the Kalimba cenote. Yet the 4 swam for about 25 minutes, until they reached the end of the stationary Paso de Lagarto line. It was only then that they realized everything had gone completely off plan. They were somewhere in the giant cave complex and had no idea where to go next. Moreover, the air in their tanks had dropped to the last third, the emergency reserve. Kent Hirsch attached his jump spool to the end of the Paso de Lagarto line and swam into the unknown ahead, hoping to spot another stationary line and arrows pointing to the exit. But all he saw was darkness. The 4 didn't realize they were just 90 meters away from Grand Cenote, where they could have surfaced safely. Hirsch just didn't have enough line on his jump sloop to reach the neighboring stationary line. Yet why didn't the 4 notice they turned the wrong way and swam 20 minutes instead of 3? The answer to this question likely lies with the highly skilled cave diving instructor, Natalie L. Gibb. Besides her vast experience, she also founded a training center in the Taj Mahal cenote, just 40 kilometers from Tulum. So Natalie knows not just about underwater caves, but specifically about the Sac Actun tunnels where Hirsch, Nast, and the Downey couples were diving. In one of her articles, Gibb recounted an incident that happened directly to her. Natalie dived into a cave she had been to maybe 100 times to shoot a video. During the shoot, she was suddenly blinded by a powerful light. The diver immediately swam off course and, upon regaining composure, checked with her compass and was briefly scared. She found out she was moving in the wrong direction. The focus on filming and the blinding light disoriented even a professional instructor. And since Natalie Gibb knew about the tragedy of 2004, she speculated that it was the cameras that caused her problem because, On that tragic day, William Downey was also involved in underwater filming. When two divers resurfaced at the Columbus cenote, it turned out to be William and Jean Downey. Their tanks were practically empty, and making it to the exit was proof of their skill and a miracle. After the four ended up at the end of the Paso de Lagarto line, nearly 900 meters from the Columbus cenote, 10 times farther than from Grand Cenote. They didn't know it, so Michael Nast turned back. Jean Downey followed, then William, and finally, after grabbing his jump sloop, Kent Hirsch chased after them. For a while, the Downey couple was ahead, but Jean saw the lights of two other team members behind them. They all realized they were in mortal danger, and panic slowly started to grip the divers. Their heart rates and breathing accelerated, and they were burning through more precious air. At some point, William Downey checked his gauges and realized he wouldn't have enough breathing mix to make it to the exit. He signaled to his wife, and she shared her air, which was just a bit more than his. From then on, they swam literally within arm's reach so William could breathe through Jean's spare hose. Eventually, the couple managed to reach the Columbus cenote. They waited, expecting Kent and Nast to show up any minute. They never did. William glanced at his almost empty tank and realized the tragedy. Their partners weren't coming back. The divers had nothing left to do but notify rescuers of the two people lost in the Sac Actun caves. Divers found the bodies of Kent Hirsch and Michael Nast side by side just 75 meters from the Columbus cenote. Both tanks were completely empty, and Hirsch's long hose was deployed, meaning he shared air with his partner until the end. The double loss of professionals shocked the diving community. William and Jean Downey were even more stunned. They claimed that after the jump from Box Chen to Paso de Lagarto, they both saw a marker pointing to Kalimba. Still, none of them could explain why the group turned the wrong way and swam so far without noticing. They just didn't know how it happened. And the most horrifying thing is that Natalie Gibbs' theory about the camera's role in the divers' deaths is not unfounded because in 2018, the same caves saw another fatal event. On November 14th, two German divers, both certified and experienced in cave diving, descended into the Columbus cenote. They were part of one of the four teams diving that day, but when the other teams started to return, they noticed the German divers were still missing. They searched all the nearby cenotes, and soon it became clear that something terrible had happened. Several teams dove into the caves to search for the missing men, and they found one diver's lifeless body at the gap between the Kalimba and Paso de Lagarto lines, while the other diver was found beyond the Grand Cenote line. Among the deceased diver's equipment was a camera they used to film their dive. Footage from it showed that the divers often stopped and swam much slower than usual, so they basically used up more air but covered less distance. And when they decided to turn back, they found out there was already too little air left in their tanks. This tragedy once again reminded us of the deadly danger of cave diving. Now, does it really scare hundreds of people who continue to dive into Sac Actun? If these caves were a single straight tunnel, it would stretch from the center of Los Angeles to the center of Las Vegas. Can you imagine such a massive underground structure? So, with this in mind, can you understand why divers risk their lives to see this incredible natural phenomenon with their own eyes? I mean, I get it. It's pretty mesmerizing, but still, is it worth it to put your life at risk for that? What do you think?